Out of nowhere, China suddenly declares it will no longer import liquefied natural gas from the United States. No warning, no negotiations, just an immediate freeze. For the United States, the world's top LNG exporter, this is a shockwave. We're talking billions in lost trade. Ports stacked with idle LNG tanks, shipments once headed across the Pacific now rerouted elsewhere. The question is obvious. What happens when the world's largest LNG buyer cuts off the world's largest supplier? And here's the twist. China isn't redirecting this supply to itself. Instead, it opens the door for Australia, a U.S. ally, to step in. Why would China do that? And how does this reshape global markets, energy prices, and even geopolitics? Picture LNG supertankers sitting in harbors, cranes moving empty tanks, workers waiting with nothing to load, while European traders suddenly find unexpected opportunities. This isn't just about fuel. It's about global economics, trade maneuvering, and international power plays. In this video, we'll break down why China made this move, what it means for the US, China, and Australia, and how the energy map of the world is shifting right now. To see why China's decision is such a big deal, you first have to understand the country's role in the energy world. China isn't just any nation. With 1.4 billion people and the second largest economy on Earth, its energy demand is enormous, constantly growing and impossible to ignore. In 2024 alone, China imported 132 million tons of natural gas, paying more than $63 billion, more than the GDP of some countries. Its supply comes in two main forms: LNG shipped by sea and pipeline gas from neighbors. Last year, China brought in 76.65 million tons of LNG, about 58% of its total gas imports, and 55 million tons through pipelines. In short, it's heavily dependent on both. That scale makes China the world's biggest LNG importer. Even small changes in its buying habits can shake markets worldwide. For the US, losing even a fraction of that demand isn't just inconvenient, it's a serious economic hit. And for competitors, it's a chance to rewrite strategies. The United States isn't only a political superpower, it's a giant in energy. With 12.6 trillion cubic meters of natural gas reserves, it ranks fifth worldwide. By 2023, it exported over 91 million tons of LNG, surpassing Qatar and Australia to become the largest exporter on the planet. China has been an important customer. Despite tensions during Trump's first term, trade resumed in 2020. By 2024, U.S. LNG exports to China hit 4.15 million tons, around 5.4% of China's LNG imports, making the U.S. its fifth largest supplier. Think of America's LNG industry as a massive engine. China was one of its key fuel lines. Remove that line overnight, and the engine sputters. From dock workers and shippers to global traders, the impact spreads fast. So why did China suddenly suspend U.S. LNG imports? The answer lies in trade policy. In 2025, President Donald Trump imposed 10% tariffs on Chinese goods, continuing his hardline trade strategy. China hit back with 15% tariffs on U.S. LNG. This wasn't a small price bump. It pushed U.S. LNG costs for China up by about 23%, making American shipments far less attractive. The dominoes fell quickly: higher prices, stalled contracts, and delayed shipments. What was once a stable trade flow turned into a high-stakes standoff, proving how political decisions can instantly rattle global markets. Then came the decisive move. Early in 2025, China froze all U.S. LNG imports. But the cargoes didn't sit idle. Instead, buyers redirected shipments to Europe, where demand was soaring. This flipped the global market on its head. U.S. exporters lost millions in revenue, Europe suddenly gained supply, and traders everywhere scrambled. Imagine massive LNG carriers changing course mid-journey, European ports unloading gas meant for Asia, U.S. docks filling with unused tanks. Prices shifted, schedules collapsed, and the energy trade became less about supply and more about strategy. With the U.S. cut out, Australia wasted no time stepping in. In March 2025, Woodside Energy signed a 15-year deal with China Resources Gas. Starting in 2027, it will supply 600,000 tons of LNG annually. This isn't a temporary patch. It's a long-term foothold in the world's biggest energy market. And Australia holds two big advantages. Its LNG is about 20% cheaper than America's, and shipping times are 10 days shorter. In energy, those differences are huge. While the U.S. lost ground, Australia gained it, proving how timing and agility can turn disruption into opportunity. So why would China hand such a large market share to Australia, a close US ally? Because China plays the diversification game. It doesn't rely on one supplier. Its LNG comes from a mix of countries: Australia, Qatar, Malaysia, Russia, Indonesia, and Papua New Guinea. By spreading its imports across different partners, China insulates itself from political pressure. If one supplier falters, another fills the gap. Its energy strategy as national security. This kind of diversity weakens any one supplier's bargaining power and helps China secure a steady energy supply, even if tensions rise with another partner. Timing is also important. The Woodside deal begins in 2027, right when the China-Russia East Line pipeline is fully online. That pipeline will provide a major new stream of natural gas, further reducing dependence on any single source. Think of it like adding lanes to a busy highway. Even if one is blocked, traffic still moves smoothly. For China, bringing in Australia isn't risky. It's another carefully placed piece in a bigger strategy to build resilience and flexibility into its energy system. China's approach isn't just about buying LNG from different countries. It's about creating a layered framework for energy security at the lowest possible cost. Analysts often describe it as a triple energy shield. First, there's Middle Eastern LNG. China buys liquefied natural gas from Qatar and Malaysia on the spot market to handle short-term fluctuations in demand. Second, Central Asian pipeline gas. Turkmenistan, Kazakhstan, and Uzbekistan send gas directly by pipeline. In 2024 alone, China imported about 25.43 million tons from Turkmenistan, 3.63 million from Kazakhstan, and 1.93 million from Uzbekistan. Pipeline gas is not only reliable, it's much cheaper, averaging just 60% of the cost of US LNG. And third, Russian gas. The East Line pipeline from Russia secures another large portion at predictable long-term prices. By combining these three layers, China avoids leaning too heavily on any one partner or supply type. This gives it price flexibility, stable logistics, and strong negotiating leverage. Even if US LNG were cut off completely tomorrow, factories, homes, and power plants across China would keep running without disruption. This mix of suppliers allows China to stay stable while grabbing opportunities like the new Australian deal. Imports aren't the only piece of the puzzle. China is also rapidly increasing domestic production. In just the first 2 months of 2025, it produced 43.3 billion cubic meters of natural gas, up 3.7% from the year before. This growth comes not only from established fields, but also from new coal bed, methane, and shale projects coming online. Over the past 5 years, China's self-sufficiency rate rose from 57% to 65%. That means more of its energy now comes from within its own borders. Think of it as strengthening your backyard before relying on your neighbors. By pairing stronger domestic production with diversified imports, China builds an energy safety net that can withstand shocks. Even if US trade stays frozen, China can keep its factories powered, its grids stable, and its homes heated. While China's strategy makes it stronger, the US LNG sector is taking heavy losses. With Chinese orders gone, American exporters are losing around $1.5 billion a year. Idle LNG at ports drains another $3 million daily in storage and logistics costs. Picture Louisiana's docks, giant LNG tanks stacked up, pipelines that were supposed to send gas overseas sitting unused, workers standing by with nowhere to ship product. The impact is not abstract. It's visible, physical, and costly. Energy analysts, including from Canada's Department of Energy, warn this could drag the U.S. industry into a decade-long slowdown. Without new buyers or contracts, American companies risk losing jobs, revenue, and influence in the global LNG game. Here's the twist. While the U.S. struggles, Europe comes out ahead. Instead of letting U.S. LNG shipments sit idle, Chinese buyers redirected them to Europe, avoiding tariffs while even making a profit. The side effect? European countries suddenly had access to gas that was never intended for them, filling critical supply gaps and calming their markets. For traders, it felt like winning a jackpot they never bought a ticket for. This highlights a key truth of global trade. When big disruptions happen, someone always benefits. What was meant as U.S. pressure on China rippled outward, creating opportunities for Europe and others ready to step in. So what does this dramatic shuffle teach us? First, China has moved beyond being just a buyer. It now shapes prices, sets standards for LNG infrastructure, and influences which energy technologies gain traction worldwide. In short, it helps write the rules of the game. Second, energy doesn't work well as a trade weapon. The US may have tried to use LNG exports as leverage, but China's diversified supply, rising domestic output, and long-term deals weakened the blow. Meanwhile, Australia and Europe capitalized on the disruption. Finally, China's role will only expand. The International Energy Agency forecasts that by 2030, 35% of global LNG trade growth will come from China. The world's biggest buyer is also becoming the most powerful influencer in setting prices and alliances. Let's recap. In early 2025, China froze U.S. LNG imports, shaking the global market. The U.S. lost billions and saw its docks overflow with unused gas. Europe, meanwhile, unexpectedly gained supply, while Australia secured a long-term deal to deepen its position. China, with its diversified imports, pipeline partnerships, and rising domestic production, has only strengthened its energy security and global leverage. This wasn't just a trade fight, it was a lesson in how energy, economics, and geopolitics intertwine. The global energy game keeps shifting, and now you've seen exactly how China, the US, Australia, and Europe are playing it.